Hello and welcome. Today we've got Alex Collier, a very special guest who has had contact. Who was a contactee with the counselor of the Andromedans. Did I say that correctly, Alex?
It's a constellation of
Good.
Andromeda, dimensional Andromedan beings. Yes.
Thank you, thank you. So, and he says that there are lots of 5Ds um, people right now here, and he was going to tell us his a story which I massively admire, and I've been following Alex Collier as well, and he's fantastic. I'm a fan, and I'm honored to have you on my show. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And I will also leave Alex Collier's links below as well, if he wishes, so you can follow him too. Alex, how are you? And thank you for joining me.
Nicholas, I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a real honor for me. I've watched your work and in awe, and you do a fantastic job of getting information out, getting to the bottom of it, and presenting the facts, which is all we want to do because humanity's kind of like walking blind for quite some time. We keep moving forward, but we don't know where we've been and the true story of humanity, because most of that has been kept from us as to our origins, our beginnings, the history of our planet, and the fact that the Earth never was the center of the universe, and the fact that we're not alone, we've never been alone, and in fact, most of us on a soul level have migrated to Earth to experience physicality in this realm. So it's thank you. So
No, you're very welcome. Yeah, I mean, I would love it if you could do your usual presentation that you've done in the past with one video that I saw with a Japanese audience, which I thought was awesome. And as soon as I heard the first 5 minutes, I was just glued. And then I was trying to find more videos of you, and I just wanted to hear more and more and more. It just resonated with me. It just resonated with me. It just felt right. It dismantled all my belief systems about what we were taught since we were born, because it just didn't resonate with me. The only thing that I stuck to it was just because it was what I was told. But I'm so open to learn the truth, and what you were saying resonated with me. It felt natural, and it felt great. So if we could go through your explanation and then what happened when you were 8. So if you could explain the earth and who we are, where we are, why we're special, genetically royalty, and then what happened when you were 8, and then we could go from there, continue from there, if that's okay.
um, I've never watched the Japanese lecture, so in fact I don't watch any of them after I do them. So I'm just going to be winging it here because I don't remember
Sure.
per se. But in a nutshell, let me just say that there is life everywhere on multiple planes of existence, and the coin of the realm is not gold or silver; it's DNA, and it's the expression of DNA. It is creating life forms. It is creating specifically life forms that have the potential to hold spirit. Because when you have life forms that hold spirit, they create and generate light. And, the space that we find ourselves in, this holograph that we call the universe, was created from the outside first. The source of all things, the isness, the A's call it. We call it God. There are multiple names for it. The indigenous people refer to it as Great Spirit. Whatever that presence is, it was outside and it created the space. And then we as souls entered this space in order to create light. And that involves a lot of things. It involves creating dimensions. It creates bands of light, creates color, light, and sound, then creating physicality, and then organisms to inhabit that physicality. Stars, creating stars. Literally, stars pull their energy from a higher dimension. So here in third density, many of our stars pull their frequency, their energy, because they're all electric, from fourth density. We have stars now that are converting from fourth to fifth, like our sun. Our sun is changing. If you paid attention to it over the last 20 years, it's become white. It's no longer yellow. That's because it's pulling in a higher frequency from fifth dimension. Okay, that's where it's pulling its energy from, which is why a lot of things are changing in what we see as our universe. This isn't limited just to Earth. What makes the Earth unique is that we are at the very end of the Orion spiral arm in our galaxy. And it's a remote location. So you can do a lot of things without, or let's just say a lot of things have been done that were out of the purview of, let's say, more advanced or older civilizations. They tend to look after, pay attention, guide, mentor civilizations that are just coming into their own or are self-evolving. And what they also tried to do is to eliminate manipulation, control, slavery, things of that nature. Unfortunately, a lot of that for a while occurred here, and it's only now that things are starting to be reversed. And what I mean by that is now we're being given the time and the place and the presence to self-empower, to truly evolve and become ourselves. And they're eliminating a very regressive, dark presence. Now, in their perspective, the dark has a place because what it does is it forces change. However, when it becomes a threat to the existence of any organism, that's when it has to be removed. And they will do just about anything in order to do that. When I was we were up in the northern peninsula of Michigan, near a group of lakes. My grandparents used to have a cabin near a place called Crooked Lake on the northern peninsula of Michigan. And we always go up there towards the end of the summer, all the cousins and the aunts and uncles and everybody, and we would stay at the cabin or park RVs and stuff on the property. And we would have the last bling before school started, and then the winter set in. And we had all gone out to a huge field to play hide and go seek. And I remember just laying down on a bunch of high grass underneath a chestnut tree, and I fell asleep. It was very hot, and I was tired. And anyway, I woke up, and I'm on this table, and it was just a room, and there was a light coming from somewhere. I couldn't tell you exactly where, but there was two beings. On my left, I think it was Visayas, and on my right was Morine. Now, Morine is very tall. He's 7.5 feet tall. He's got light blue skin. Visayas, on the other hand, is very short, and his skin used to be light blue, but as they age, it becomes white. And he looked rather Oriental Asian, even though they're the same race. I have to tell you, I wasn't scared at all. I knew these people. I knew these two beings. And at first I didn't understand how I knew. but I knew it was just like, oh, wow. You know, it was like that. Absolutely no fear. And then Morine telepathically, because they were strictly telepathic in the beginning, put this device on me. It looked like a yarmulke, and it was a metallic, and it had a hole in the center. He put it on the top of my head as I'm laying down. And as soon as he put it on my head, these monitors came out of the wall. And one row of the monitors was showing me in past lives. And they were pulling this out of my cellular memory. And some of it was really cool. Some of it was heroic. And some of it was me abusing my power.
Mhm.
And I knew it was me because I recognized me. And what I mean by that is I had different bodies. I was with different races, but the eyes were the same. And I knew it. And then on this side, it was all medical. They were monitoring all my meds, you know, my physical features. And that's how it started. And I can't tell you how long I was there. When I was put back onto the ground, I got up and nobody was playing hide and go seek anymore. My mom said I had been missing for 3.5, 4 hours. She was livid. But what's interesting is that before this first contact ended, they shared with me that I was one of them, that I had come here on a mission 62 plus thousands of years ago in Earth linear time. And I got caught, me and 3 others, there were 4 of us, in a civil war, in a war that took place here. And we chose a side and we were killed. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense why I know these 2 beings. Then he said to me, he said, look, you're going to experience some real change. We want you to know that it's going to be okay. That it's going to be okay. And I did not know what he meant, but he just said, you know, we're watching over you. You're going to be okay. 2 months later, we're going to pick apples because my mom was very, very pregnant. And, you know, back in '64, seatbelts weren't mandatory. In fact, a lot of cars didn't even have them. We got hit by a drunk driver, and I lost my mom and my baby sister, and everything changed dramatically. And I'm just giving you the Cliff Notes version. So after that, there was a lot of, when I would go to sleep at night, they would pull me out. And I would go and spend time with them in my spiritual body, my spiritual body, you know, me. I would leave the body behind and I would go with them. And there'd be, you know, conversations, there'd be teaching. And then when I got a little bit older, around 12, my dad would work in upstate New York, and he would take me to a lake where I'd go fishing. Because I used to love to fish. I loved the quiet and just being peaceful. And I would go there and then I would hear Morine's voice say, let's take a walk. So I'm walking and he's talking to me, and then suddenly he'd be there in the path. And the next thing I know is I'm on board. And now we're having a conversation and I'm sharing with them in the physical. Now they're 5th density beings.
Mhm.
That means that the inside of their ship is 5th density, regardless of what you see on the outside. So they would have to put a belt on me to hold it. It's basically an atmospheric belt. Yeah, it's an atmospheric bodysuit. And it would only come off just a little bit off the body, but it would absolutely mimic perfectly the Earth's atmosphere. So even if I were to pick up something, a piece of food or something on their ship, the minute I picked it up and I brought it inside the field, it would be converted to something I could eat and it would be nutrition. I did this a couple times with their food. I tried eating their stuff, but the oxygen content was so high, I got really sick. And one time I threw up all over the place. So, they were like, no, we're not doing that anymore. So, let's see. I'm trying to condense this because there's just so much.
I mean, I can help you remember because I
That
watched
would be
it.
great. That
Yeah.
would be great.
Okay, no. Could you explain how wonderful their ship was and what it looked like and
Oh,
how
sure.
big it was and they had everything?
On the outside, whenever they would come into the space, it's a perfect circular ball. And it wouldn't look any more than 30 feet on the outside. But you see, when they come into fourth or third density, they can choose the size of the space they want to take up in our density. In other words, if they wanted to take up 5 miles in our density, they could, but that would draw attention to them. So the smaller is better. The most appropriate and what they were the most comfortable with was somewhere around 30 feet. Now, once you go on board, Morinae ship, I mean, you're looking at it from the outside, but when you're inside, it has 7 floors. You can walk, it would feel like miles inside the craft. You would take it's kind of like a vacuum chute up and down the floors. All you do is walk into it, it lights up, and he would just say, where do you want to go? And I would say, to the flight deck. Boom, we're on the flight deck. And it's just all you see is this light, and then you're there. There didn't seem to be any working parts whatsoever. But each floor had a different thing. They had a cargo bay. They had another bay with equipment, all kinds of equipment to repair their ship. Should something happen to it, wherever they are, they have all the equipment they have there. On another floor, they had a medical group, a medical, sort of like like an emergency room in the event that something happened to them physically, or if they were to do rescue missions, which they often do, of other races that get stuck, or their star's going to go nova, or there's going to be a planetary collision between 2 planets. They will go in and they will rescue. And then if there's medical issues, they can address it right there. Then there is a living quarters, where there would be some type of sleeping quarters. And then there's the flight deck, and there was another deck above, which I was never taken to. That could have been the propulsion system area. I don't exactly know. That's what I suspect, because that's the only thing I never saw on their ship, was their actual propulsion system.
So you're saying that from the outside on our 3D Earth, the spaceship would look like just 30, feet. But then inside, as soon as you board inside, it's just huge.
Here's the best analogy. What kind of a car do you drive?
I have a Mercedes.
Okay. You get into the Mercedes, and then once you're inside and you close the door, it's the size of an ocean liner on the inside. But when you get out of the car and you close the door, you're in a 10-foot parking space.
Right, I get it.
That's it.
So when we're told that ETs are much more advanced than us and they understand more about physics and densities more than us, yes. Is that the reason why the spaceship is so big? Is because they're able to control that because they're more advanced?
Well, you have to remember, they're in the A's particular situation, they're 5th density. So on our physical realm, we have a color spectrum in 3rd density of 72 frequencies. When you get to fourth, it's 121. When you get to fifth, it's now 223. So what that means is space is bigger,
Right.
much bigger, beyond what we could even fathom. That also means their physicality is larger. Their planets are larger. So, I mean, all of his crew, they're all 7, 8 feet tall. They're huge, huge beings. So, in that space, for that space, when they decide to fall into time, which would be fourth density or third density, more specifically third density, that's how they refer to us as falling into time. They only take up this much space in our density because it's virtually unseen. We don't even see it. There are so many ships in the sky, no one ever sees them. The military does because of all their radar and satellites, but they don't tell us half, they don't even tell us a third of what they know. And they're not going to just yet. When you see a ship that's several miles long, that's usually a third density ship or a lower fourth density ship. When you see them miles long, that means that they want us to see them. They want their presence to be known. Now, there are some ET groups that are, how do I put this? They enjoy being admired. They enjoy being worshiped.
Like the Orions?
They enjoy being worshiped because they feed off the energy. So they will allow themselves to be seen. They want themselves to be seen. Because in many cases, whether it's fear or adoration, it's still energy. Fifth dimensional, you don't have the ego presence that you do in lower fourth density and that you see predominantly here in third density. Their mission, those beings on fifth, they have moved through all of those evolutionary spiritual phases to a place that their entire existence now is family, and that's how they see their races, and service to others.
Now, please.
And that service to others involves a great deal of mentoring, teaching when the time is right, and a particular civilization is open to relearning what reality actually is and what reality actually isn't, which is where we are right now. You know, this whole ascension into fifth dimensional consciousness, we're at that place where we are now wanting to know what reality really is, because we've had a taste already of what it isn't, which has been enslavement, disease, poverty, fear, and slavery, all these things that humanity has had to deal with for the last 10,000 years.
Right. So before we speak more about the Andromedans, which I want to get into, the A's, can we speak about what kind of other beings there are, if there are other humans like us out there or similar to us, and what their agenda is and different energies? And then we can, because people need to know that there are good and then there are bad. There are ones, I believe the Orions are manipulating our governments, which they do human sacrifices and they do all of these things. Makes us wonder that humans can't do these things because they are not humans, they are evil. So I want to go into the different types of life forms, and then we'll speak more about the Andromedans and what kind of life they live and their lifestyle, their beliefs, their ambitions. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
When we talk about diversity here on Earth, which we have a considerable amount of, when you're talking about space, we're probably 0.1% when it comes to diversity. I mean, according to the age, there's 100 trillion galaxies. Just in our third density realm, we've counted, 100 million, So there's more life than we could possibly imagine. Now, virtually every single ecosystem, and we're talking about E-type, which would be Earth type. We could be talking about plasma. We could be talking about hydrogen, sulfuric acid, every known periodic mineral on our table, and then some, because we have minerals on our moon we've never seen before. We don't even know what they are. They're finding stuff on Mars, the Space Force that's on Mars, and the colonies on Mars. They're finding things there they don't even know how to analyze. So there's life everywhere. There's always a way for life to expand and to grow, because that's the nature of creating light. You create light with life. So, and the old saying, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, creator abhors a vacuum. If she is going to create the space, she wants it filled with life, with energy, producing more and more light, because that's the essence of all things. Even with the dark side, they couldn't exist without the light. The problem is that somewhere down the road, they stopped creating their own light and decided they needed to feed off of others. That's where they went south. So, is there human life? There's human life everywhere, even on the higher dimensions. The human form is predominantly the physicality of conscious life on both sides of the table, both light and dark. The human form goes all the way up, as far as I know, to 6th density. As we know ourselves as humans, the bodies are different. They're not only larger, but they have many more strands of DNA. They're all active. They have larger brain capacities. Their bodies, literally to us physically here in 3rd density, appear as light. And in some cases, you can actually see through them. But if you are on their density, you would see a physicality just like we do on 3rd density. Because every dimension, every plane of existence has a physicality. They have climate, they have planets, they have gases, they have plant life, they have animal life, sentient life, they have aquatic life. There are so many similarities between the dimensions and the life forms and the goals of these civilizations. We are just a small microcosm of a much bigger plan. Now, what's interesting is that the Earth, and I have to go here to button this point up, we have several soul groups of souls who have fallen in time from higher dimensional realms to experience 3rd density here. Now, my understanding, as best as I can piece it together, is that 3rd density life has never fully ascended into a 4th and then to a 5th density. physicality, and consciousness. What happened here on Earth, because of the location where we are at the end of the Orion spiral arm, because of all the different races that have come and gone from here, as they were leaving the galaxy to travel to places unknown, but also because of Atlantis. Atlantis was a huge interstellar space colony. Many different races were invited here to put down roots, to experiment, to explore the Earth's ecosystem, because it's one of the most complex in our entire galaxy. It's extremely unique. And as they were here, there was some experimentation, and then there was also mating between human extraterrestrial populations from different star systems with Earth humans, women, predominantly. This created, for lack of a better word, a hybrid race. This hybrid race, which we call ourselves now Homo sapien sapien, has the genetic makeup of 22 different extraterrestrial races. This makes us galactic royalty. We're the only ones where it doesn't matter where you are on this planet, you not only have the genetics, but you have the cellular memory of 22 different spacefaring civilizations in our DNA. Now, there's a recent study in France of the hypothalamus. And what they have just discovered is that the hypothalamus, there are parts of the hypothalamus that have the ability to go into the future in time and bring back information. They've also discovered, when they discovered that, is that it can also go back in time and bring forth information. So one of the reasons for the lockdown of humanity is because potentially we have far more power, far more abilities than our slave masters. And they were actually terrified of us. They were terrified that we were going to wake up and find out who we actually were. Now, because we belong to these soul groups that are from different dimensional planes, when we wake up, we create a consciousness shift on all those dimensions, because you're never separated from place of origin. You are always connected to place of origin, which is why the A's have always said all the broken pieces always find their way home, because you connect back to point of origin. So when we wake up, when humanity flips the script and we begin to truly see ourselves as one race, one consciousness, we create not only genetic, but spiritual shifts, conscious shifts on all the dimensions in which the soul groups came from. Because we are like a composite. We're a library of galactic history across the board. When you put it all together, we are a compendium of all that is just in our galaxy.
Right.
We just don't know it yet, because we've been pushed down, suppressed, spanked. Just, they did a number on us. They really, really did. But that's ending now. So, but we're a compendium of all that is in our galaxy.
I want to go back a little bit where you said that when you were found on the table, when you had Visayas next to you, the A's, and they showed you your past lives. Did you remember them straight away, your past lives when you saw them?
No, the first thing I did was react emotionally to them. There were several where I was a warrior. And some of those were not on Earth and some of those were Earth. And I'm going to say that the energy and the manner in which we conducted ourselves, we were knights. KNIGHTS.
Mm-hmm.
And I've to this moment, I always resonate to that. There were other lifetimes where I was not a human. I was something in the water, some kind of an aquatic being that drowned. And I was shown that. I don't know exactly why, but that's the first thing that my cellular memory showed. So obviously, according to Morane, years later, that was a trauma I would need to address at some point. And the other ones, I have to honestly tell you, I barely remember, other than being some kind of a hairy thing that was huge, just this giant hairy beast that was fighting what looked like dinosaurs on some other planet. And there were others behind me who were just like me. And we were battling these huge dinosaurs on this planet. And around the dinosaurs' feet were all these little beings that were running for their lives from fear of the dinosaurs. So we were there to help. But I immediately resonated, for the most part, on those where I said the energy was very symbolic of a knight. And, that's something I've always done ever since I was a kid, was try to defend those who couldn't, and to stand up for those, and to push back against bullies and things like that.
So when you said you was emotionally connected, you became emotional. Was you angry? Was you happy? Was you sad? Or was you just overwhelmed? What kind of emotions are we speaking about?
I didn't get overwhelmed until several days after the experience. And I'll get into that. But during the process of seeing it, it was fear, anger, confidence, sorrow, especially when I saw myself being taken out. It was almost as if I was reliving it, that moment then, right there on the table.
I see.
Now, several days later, after I got the crap kicked out of me for disappearing, and I tried to explain to my mother, and it didn't go well, what had happened, then I began to wow, what was that all about? What did I actually just experience? I couldn't make heads or tails of it, because for however long I was with them, I was in a completely different reality. Completely different, one that I totally resonated to, and I would have been okay staying. I absolutely would have been. Because it was familiar, Nicholas, and I knew it was familiar. And then here I am down here, and it's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. No, 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 you can't do this, you can't do that. Where are you going? Stay here. It's just, it was all this control and suppression. And that's kind of when it hit me. And then I started wow, what was that all about? And you go through the different phases. Was I dreaming? Did that actually really happen? Am I nuts? I can't tell anybody this because they'll think I'm crazy. And that's literally what happened, up until I was 18, 19. And then my dad had an experience. We were living in upstate New York, and my dad used to get up in the middle of the night to get a snack. And he would go downstairs, get a snack. Well, I would I was in school, and I would always read my homework late at night. So it wasn't unusual for me to fall asleep with the light on and the book, school book, textbook on my chest. So my dad saw my light on. He opened up the door, and he said he saw me floating in and then being put down onto the bed. And he said there was a little light in the corner of the room. And he goes, it moved around the room. It looked at all my books, and then it stopped right by my head, and it looked right at my dad. And he goes, and I saw it. He goes, it looked right at me. And then he said it flew right through the window without breaking it. So he said he quietly closed the door, and he went downstairs. And when I got up in the morning, he took a shower to grab something to eat downstairs. That's where I found my dad, was at the breakfast table. And I'm like, hey, Dad, what's going on? And he said, hey, sport, have a seat. And whenever it was a serious discussion, it was always sport, you know? So he sat down and he told me what happened. And that's when I shared with my dad everything. And it was really interesting. My dad was a devout Catholic. He only had a couple of questions. The first one was, do they hurt you? And I'm like, no, they're actually our friends. They know all about you, Dad. They think you're great. You know, they look after us. And he goes, okay, where are they from? And I told him. And then he paused and he goes, is there a God? And I go, yes, Dad, there is. There definitely is a God. And at that point, you could see the sigh of relief come over my father. And Nicholas, my father was a devout Catholic. He always prayed to the Sacred Heart. He never wanted to go there again. And then years later, when he was very, very ill, and I went down to Florida to see him before he had went into the hospital, before he crossed over, he had remarried, and my stepmother, we were outside, and there was a huge ship, spaceship in the sky over Florida, which is not unusual. So Arlene, his wife, turned to me and she goes, did they follow you? And that's the first time I knew that she knew anything about it. She never said anything growing up, but that's the first time. So they knew. A lot of people just don't know how to go there, because once you open up the can of worms, people's belief system and the reality that they're living, the construct that they have of who they are in this reality, begins to unravel. And not everyone's ready for that. They're not ready to look at something that isn't what they see every single day. Or they're just not willing to know that there's more beyond what you're seeing every day. And you know, everyone has their own reasons. So it's been interesting. It's been a real process. And you know, like we were saying before we started the talk today, it's amazing how much information is coming out now.
Yeah.
And for those of us who started back 30 years ago, and we were kooks, nuts, frauds, you know, it goes on, antichrists, demons, all that shit. You know, we're having to adapt now to the openness, to being able to share the information openly without having to worry about imperial entanglements.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you had your experiences with seeing your past lives. You've
Yes.
had this experience of meeting the Andromedans. You've been on the spaceship. You've seen how they are, peaceful they are. I mean, just to make it clear to the viewers, the Andromedans are our ancestors, or we're their ancestors.
They are, and they are our ancestors. We are their third density cousins.
Right, got it. In the density level.
Yes.
So you've had this experience, and when you knew, as a child, when you knew you had to continue your life here on Earth, do you feel that because you remember everything and you had that experience, do you feel that you're suffering here on earth? Do you feel that because you can feel the contrast, whereas we don't feel it? This is all we know.
There have been periods of my life where I completely rebelled. There have been times where I tried to leave, intentionally leave. There have been times where I would just find a place in the wilderness and I would try to stay there for as long as I could. When I was living in Malibu, and of all things, I had a tax practice. You talk about the dichotomy there. I would go up into the Santa Monica Mountains and there was a cave. And I would go and I would hike in food. And then I would go and spend a week there, just me and the dog, away from everybody. Just so that I could get so quiet that I could hear my own frequency. I had to hear my own frequency. Now, when I'm on board the ship, I know my frequency. It's crystal clear, it's loud, and I vibrate of it. When I come down here within 36 to 48 hours, shortly thereafter, I can't feel my frequency anymore because of the noise, the frequency, the fear, the bombardment of microwaves, all of it. I can't hear my own frequency. And I do this today. I tell everyone that I can, in the webinars, you have to spend some time in nature to get grounded. And when you're grounded, you can hear your own frequency because that's where you connect to source. And that source isn't just God, it's yourself. You yourself, you have a presence on fourth density, fifth density, sixth density, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, maybe even 12th, because you're clearly an evolved being. So you can reconnect to all of those moments of yourself on all those dimensions. And when you do that, Nicholas, when you can get grounded in that space and you can ask for help, you can ask for guidance, yourselves are obligated to help you. Mm-hmm. But you have to be able to recognize the information when it comes down. Because if we're all out here, you'll never see it. You'll never hear it. You have to go within. And the best place to do that is somewhere where it's quiet, where it's nature. Some people do it in meditation. For me, I have to be in nature. Because that's, to me, I always see God. Every time I go into nature, no matter whether it's the same spot or not, it is never the same. God is always changing it. I always see progression. So that's the importance of this moment that we're in. Because someone like you, when you hear and you know your own frequency, you can pull all the information you need right down to you, right here, now in the present. And now you're empowered. Now you are totally self-empowered. And I dare say you are walking in the same footsteps as a Jesus or any other enlightened being.
Mm-hmm. So when you met Visayas and the Ace, the Andromedans, and you say that they have blue skin, what kind of texture is their skin? Is it similar to ours? Is it?
Yes, it's very much like ours.
Do they have hair? Like, do they have hairstyles?
The Zenitaians do not have hair. Now, if they have it on some other place of the body, I don't know, because they're always wearing suits. I never saw them naked.
So they do wear clothes?
Yes.
What kind of
bodysuit?
A bodysuit, not like the way we wear clothes.
No, their suit does everything. And I understand they only have 2 or 3 for a lifetime, but it essentially does everything for them. It's a heater, an air conditioner, purifier. It does everything. It protects them from heat, chemicals, solar rays, different type of energy frequencies that may be prevalent in their dimension that I don't know, but that's what it's for. And as they grow, they're given a new suit, and the suits are made specifically for them. They're each individually manufactured for them to wear. And it's self-cleaning, it does everything.
Mhm.
It's a remarkable piece of technology.
Do their faces look like our faces?
Yes.
Oh, so they're
Yes,
very
they do.
similar, just more,
They're
just
very, very similar. Except they're a little bit bigger boned. Yes,
right.
and they have a little bit longer cranium in the back. Not huge like we've seen in some of the Egyptian or the Mayan or Aztec skulls. It's not at all like that, but it's a little bit. But they're just bigger. They're, woo, you know.
See, more like they're very aesthetic, healthy, like
Yes.
they're fit, like they've been to the
Yeah.
gym. Okay, got it.
Yeah, they look like professional wrestlers.
Okay, right. So can you speak to me more about their lifestyle, what they do? You know, I remember you saying that some of them have never been to their home worlds because they travel in ships and they
Yes.
stay in the universe, in space, and they've got these
They
huge
explore.
ships and they've got everything that they need, and they you know they reincarnate and all of that. Could you explain to me both sides, their home worlds, their spaceship, and how they live and how they see life and what life means to them and what their goal is?
Well, I don't know that I can answer all of those questions. Well, I
Sure.
know for a fact I can't. But from what I have observed, they are a remarkably healed race. They don't have conflict amongst themselves. They don't appear to have conflict um, within themselves, or if they do, it's dealt with. What I have seen for the most part is that they're very happy. They're constantly exploring. They are constantly learning. Um, their entire civilization is built on the structure that what the oldest and wisest know, the youngest are taught. And they call that the law of consistency. So that, in other words, they live on an average of over 2,000 years. So going through an educational program of, let's say, 150 years
Mhm.
is like nothing for them. But no matter what your age group is, and I guess this has to do with the quality of the soul and their ability to know and to learn, whatever new information they discover or uncover about their realm, fifth density, or fourth or third, everyone on board or in that civilization is taught the same thing. It is shared with everyone. Do you remember in the old days well, you wouldn't, but in the West, whenever you went to an old schoolhouse, all the children were taught together in the same classroom. It didn't matter what your grade level was. This is exactly the same principle, except it has to do with age. It doesn't matter what your age group is. You're all taught the exact same thing because they're very specific about the law of consistency, that when their younger generations come to a place of maturity, they have an opportunity to go somewhere else, do something else, become part of a different group, let's say, another starship that's exploring a different part of the universe, they have that opportunity. And what they take with them is all the knowledge that they've acquired, that everyone's acquired from, let's say, Morinae's mothership. So that information goes to another group. That group, that information is then shared with the other star group. And the children, as they grow up and they become mature and adults and begin their families, it's the exact same thing. They educate all the way down to the very bottom, the exact same thing. So everyone, regardless of age, is exactly in the same place, mentally and spiritually. Now, when it comes to healing, they're fruitarians. They grow these magnificent orchards on their motherships. The mothership that I was on, I only saw one floor. I actually didn't see the entire floor because they're 800 miles in circumference. And each level has living quarters and orchards and is completely self-contained. They have these huge areas in the parks. And the area that was adjacent to where Morinae's housing was in his family was 21 square miles. And all of the living quarters surrounded this park area. And on the outside of the park areas is the orchards. And everybody participates in growing. And then what they do is they pick these different types of fruits and they dry them, or they could eat them naturally. But when you get on a ship or a craft to go exploring or to do a mission or a science expedition or a rescue, what they do is they dry the fruit and into like these little tablets, and then they have them on their bodies. And apparently it provides them all the nutrition they would need for the equivalent of 1 week. Their water, they drink water, they have creeks, they have streams, they have ozone. They use above the park on the ceiling, they have holographics, which mimic night and day. Now, one of their days is equivalent to a month of hours. So the sun is up for almost 33 days. When I first got there, they had some of the women asked Morinae if I was okay because they couldn't understand why I slept so much. Right? Well, I'm on a completely different biological clock, you know. So their one day is almost 33 days, and mine's 24 hours. And 10 of that we sleep, 8 to 10 hours of that we sleep. So they couldn't understand that. Medically, they have very, very few issues unless they're injured in a crash or something unusual. They use a lot of holographic technology to heal bodies. They've also used this on fourth density beings that they have been mentoring that get injured. They literally can regrow limbs in no time. Now, we're hearing a lot about that today with medbeds. I've yet to see it, so I don't know, but I'm hearing they're very similar technology. I'm glad to hear that because that tech's been out there for a while. And you have to know that tech came from Alliance, benevolent beings, because they're the ones that use it. So they use that. As far as spirit, their spiritual acronyms, they worship business. They are fully aware that there is a creative source. They acknowledge it everywhere. They see it everywhere. They respect it everywhere, very much like the indigenous people of old on this planet. And you have to remember that the indigenous people on this planet knew all about the Sky Brothers. They talk about walking with them, learning from them, interacting with them. You can go back to some of the ancient Arabic books that many archaeologists and scholars say is fiction, but it isn't fiction, it's actual history where, you have the Chaldeans, they talk about walking with the Titans, who they say were from Venus, and that the Titans would often sit with them in council to discuss their civilization, things that they needed to do with their civilization, making law decisions, how to pass laws, making laws that benefit the entire civilization itself, having them intercede if there was a conflict with another extraterrestrial race or a reptilian race, which in many times in the past occurred. The Titans would interfere and they would negotiate a peace or some kind of a resolution between the reptilian races and the Chaldeans and or Sumerians. So we have all this history that's been hidden from us. And where I'm trying to go with all this and bring it back to a conclusive place is that these things they do, we can do better. We just haven't been given the chance. We haven't been this hasn't been shared with us. We are capable of remarkable things. We just have to get out of our own way now. Once the regressives are moved out of the way, the only thing keeping us from greatness would be ourselves. So we have to stop looking at who we were, and we have to start paying attention to who we're becoming, because the future is in front of us. It's not behind us. And that's what's coming for humanity. That's where we're going. We're going to be part of a galactic community, and the ascension from third to fourth to fifth is just one step in that journey. That's not the end result. We still have a civilization here, that has to continue to grow and flourish and evolve. And we have to start looking at that as a unit, as a composite unit of all of us. So we have to change the way we think. I mean, it's going to be it's not going to be easy. I mean, most people have no idea how to live without struggling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What would that look like? What would you feel like if you could live every single day without struggling, worrying about rent, worrying about car payments, taxes, starvation? What would it be like if you never had to do anything like that? Worry about that. What would you do with your time? Where would you focus your energy then if you didn't have to worry about all those things?
It would definitely be love and enjoying our family and friends' company and finding things that fulfills our passion.
Exactly. And that's all part of the mentoring that at some point will begin. It's already begun actually with the Space Force. They've already been involved in the mentoring process. But it's going to be different when it's humanity, because everybody has different needs, everybody has different interests. Everybody comes from a different place, cultural place, which is different. So there are one size won't fit all, at least for a while. But at some point, the idea is to bring everybody to a place where we will merge into one civilization voluntarily. Because then there's no coercion. We did it voluntarily because we saw that it was the right thing to do. And dude, we're off to the races at that point. Mm-hmm. Then we start watching each other's back. Then we stop fully having wars and battles. Then we can start exploring our own galaxy and the universe as a responsible civilization. And our experience here is unique. There is a lot we can teach other races, especially, we may go to, other galaxies at some point and discover civilizations that were in a similar place we were. And we would be able to step in and mentor them and say, look, we've been here. We identify with what you're going through. Here's what we did. Here's how we got past it. Here's how we got past the idea of war. Here's how we got past the idea of a currency system. All of those things that can trap a civilization into self-destructing.
So you're saying that eventually, as we evolve into 5D and higher, of course, with evolution, we will eventually be in the same position as the Andromedans today.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Right. And it's
Because
all about
they intend to evolve to higher levels as well.
Right. So what's normal to them when it comes to having fun or playing games or you know, what do they do for fun?
That's a really good question. They love science. They love nature. The children learn in circles in the park area. They play with nature. There's a lot of teaching. I didn't hear it because I wasn't telepathic, but you know, they're all talking to each other. They like music. Typically what they've been doing is they will take music from different stars, planets, solar systems. You know, everything has a frequency. And what they'll do is they'll overlap it and they'll create music using all these different sounds of the universe. I've introduced them to contemporary jazz.
Or Michael Jackson.
You know, they're not excited about music with lyrics, but they really like not only classical music, but contemporary jazz, because I would have it on the car a lot. And then when I would have a contact, Mornay would say, you know, that was very interesting. What was that? And I've given them several pieces of music, either in a cassette or CDs. So they have it and they have the technology in which to pull it off and make it work. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we have here that they already like that are unique. And, you know, they're amazed that those who know how to create music, they're amazed that they can pull these chords out of seemingly nowhere and make something so beautiful. And the thing that they really enjoy about specifically contemporary jazz is when they listen to it, they are listening to the emotion that the musicians are playing with. Yes, they like the sound, but the sound is a result of the emotion that the musician is projecting into the music. That's what they like. They see us as having this enormous depth of emotion.
Yes.
Not like they have. We in many respects, we're off the charts. And they admire that, at least, you know, that part of it. They don't like the warring part, you know, when we get into the anger, rage, and hate. That's a very repelling energy to them. But they understand where it comes from. That a lot of that's been learned and taught behavior by the regressives. They've done that intentionally to get us to not to unite against them ever. So they use that to divide us into different groups on the planet, on the surface. What do they do for fun? They explore. Everything's about education. Everything. They would never make a movie of something pretend for entertainment. It's always about education, evolving, learning, adding more perspective to themselves. And I understand it on one level, but on another, I can't imagine what that's like for them. But you know, I'm not a fifth density being anymore.
Right.
So
you know, it's very understandable that they're, you know, because they're all about energy and frequencies and love and 5D, and they feel the different vibrations. It's you know, it makes sense that they're more interested in listening to music that, you know, that they like when it comes to energy, because that's what they're sensitive to more than we are. Like you said, here we're numb. We don't feel any of those because of the fear, and we don't even hear our frequency, our own frequency, you know. um I had another.
I can share an experience with you real quick.
Sure.
I had given them a piece of music. I was asked for it. And on it, I had one particular track by a jazz guy named Brian Culberson. He does a lot of piano. And this one particular song is called The Journey. And around the 3-minute 28, 3-minute 33-second area, he's playing his piano and he comes to this like a, it's not a crescendo, but it comes to a point where the music builds, and then he comes down on the piano and creates this chord of sound. Very much like what George Harrison did with that one particular song where he opens it up. Oh man, I just had a brain fart. Anyway, they had another race of beings that another expedition had rescued from somewhere, and they were on board, and they were being shown the archives, and somehow Earth music came up. And when they heard this one particular piece of music, they were listening, but at the 3-minute 28-second, 3-minute 33-second, where Culberson hits this piano and creates this sound, they freaked. They had never heard a frequency like this particular group that they rescued. And apparently all of them exploded with joy. They were so profoundly affected by this sound that they just exploded with joy and awe. And apparently the entire mothership heard it and felt it, because it just expanded like light. And Morane said that everybody had to listen to that particular song and that one particular area. And he goes, some really enjoyed it, some it didn't really affect them. But this one particular group of beings that they had rescued, it had a profound effect on them. And it's not something that those beings will ever forget. That's what he told me. So, you know, you just never know. You just never know.
So when you say that, I mean, does that mean that our music is maybe 5 density? The sounds, the frequencies, the feelings that it produces, maybe? I don't know.
You got it. You got it. You're the first one to get it. Without me saying it, you're the first one to get it. That's exactly right. We are pulling, that's why they're amazed. Some people are pulling this music from higher dimensional realm, and they're translating it into a realm, into this realm where our instruments can play it. But that's exactly right. The vibration of it is much higher than 3rd density.
So because we have the DNA and the capacity to create, the ability to create, we project our abilities through sounds and visuals, but especially sounds, because they're frequencies that we listen to make us feel very good. And maybe that's a clue that we are so much more than what we're being told by our current authorities.
Well, we talked about just a little while ago about hearing one's own frequency. We're all frequency. The body is frequency. Everything's energy and light, color, light, and sound, all of it. Everything, all physicality is color, light, and sound when you break it down to its simplest component. Mm-hmm. All you see is light. You take that reality, and then you take a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th density soul, and you put it into this physicality, which is color, light, and sound. The soul creates a holographic imprint in the DNA.
Right.
Okay? And what you have is literally a walking, talking sun, a star
Right.
with consciousness, two hands, can catch a football, kick a soccer ball, throw a baseball, make love, cook, sing, dance. We're all those things and much, much more. And that's why our history has been held from us so that we would not find out who we were. Because this rogue group has been feeding off of us for a very, very long time.
Right.
You
So,
know,
you know, the Andromedans, do they have the ability to control where they incarnate?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Right. Very interesting. I've got so many I'm just blown away a little bit. Just you know, it's very interesting. I'm really enjoying this interview.
Well, you know, you can call me.
I might take you up on that. Wow, wow. So interesting. Let's have a look. It's
We're
just
gonna
very
be okay. We're gonna be okay. We really are. We're coming up on some very serious learning curves here and spiritual curves. And what's going to make them difficult is that the way we've been living has to change because the system we've all been living in was designed to fail, and it's crumbling now as we speak. And not only that, but not only are we rising in consciousness, but because of the rise in frequency, the Schumann resonance, the galactic waves that are hitting us, and our conscious evolution, our bodies are beginning to change, which means the medical community is no longer going to be relevant because our bodies are going to change. Pharmaceuticals are not working on our bodies anymore. And they're freaking the hell out because they only know the old system, where humanity is literally breaking away. So the curves that are coming is letting go of the past and putting ourselves in a mindset, well, you know what? Why don't we start talking together as a community, as a nation, as a planet, and start talking about what it is we really want. What is it that we really want? And a lot of people haven't even thought about that. You know, I mean, I've asked a lot of people over the years, well, what is it that you really want? And they don't know. All they know is survival.
Yeah.
You know, just doing enough to get by.
You know,
Because that alone's overwhelmed them, you know?
very
So,
interestingly, please, no, please, Alex.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
You know, but when you speak about the medical industry and you know, I would like to, for you, if you could explain the photograph they have, the Andromedans. They take a photograph and the film that they cut.
The
Can you?
holographic camera. The
Yeah,
holographic camera.
yeah,
Yeah, that's spectacular. That's spectacular. Um, you know, it's really the software that does the work. And I can't speak to what that is. I've only seen it work once. And it was on an Andromedan who had an issue with a spacecraft and he was damaged, he was hurt. But essentially what they do is they take a picture of, let's say it's you. They'll put you on the table and they'll take this picture of you. And this holographic picture is from you, that moment, to conception. And then what they do is they're able to analyze each stage of your physical and emotional and spiritual development. And what they can do is let's say you have an injury. What they can do then, let's say you have liver cancer, God forbid, or someone is having liver cancer, and it's terminal and they're at the end of life. What they can do is take a picture, they can pull out a slide, a holographic slide of when your liver was the healthiest. They can reinsert it back into the camera, and then the camera will project back into your physicality the frequency and the holograph of when your liver was the strongest and healthiest. What it literally does is it regrows and replaces the liver in no time. I mean, we're talking hours. And then you're up and you're out of here. Now, I've heard rumors about the holograph, about the med beds. I don't know that they're that advanced. It could be that somewhere down the road, as we've matured a bit, and we're sure that most of the bad guys are gone, that technology will not fall into the wrong hands. We will be given the blueprints on how to make it ourselves. Because they say we have a lot of technology on this planet that can be used for good, but we don't even know it. We even know the full potential of some of the technology that we've reverse engineered and built from alien craft and the such. Because a lot of the technology we have has been built for weapons, for defense. Well, what happens when you no longer have to think that way? Right? That's another learning curve. When you don't have to think this way anymore, what do you do with your attention? The idea would be to take some of this technology and transform it into something positive. It won't look the same, but nonetheless, you use the components for something very positive. It's literally just flipping the concept of who we are.
You mentioned the photograph and the holographic, where they take that best part of your life of the film and then they put it in some kind of technology and imprint the holograph or the frequency or the something onto you.
They put it back into the camera. They put it back into the camera.
Yeah. And you say that we've got some technologies like this that they're hiding from us. And when you say that, I was thinking of that time where President 45, Mr. T, mentioned about a UV light.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I thought of too. I don't know. There's all kinds of rumors that, veterans are using it now and they're regrowing limbs. I don't know if any of that's true. There have been so many false stories and so many blinds. At this particular time, it's very, very difficult to exactly know where things are at, because I think the white hats and the black hats, there's still a little bit of shaking out to do, but we're clearly moving in a positive direction. But there's still some black hats. Otherwise, this would be over by now, and it's not over yet. We may be near the end. It would be spectacular if we had that.
Absolutely.
It would be absolutely, especially these kids that have been abused that they found in underground, especially kids that are dying of leukemia or cancers. There is just no reason for any of that to happen. And you know what? All this talk about overpopulation, you could give everybody now, it used to be Texas, but now you could give everybody an acre of land and put all the cities on the planet in Alaska, and Alaska could house the entire world's population right now. It's just rubbish, the garbage they're feeding us. That's all it is. It's rubbish.
Absolutely. So, ultimately, where we keep incarnating on this earth or another planet, what is the end goal after thousands and hundreds of thousands or even millions and millions of years later to come? What is the goal for us, our souls?
Yeah, everybody's asking that question on all the dimensions, as far as I know. Why is it set up this way? I guess maybe because we got so bored in heaven, we had nothing to do. We drank all the scotch and there was nothing left to do. I'm joking.
I get it. Yeah, of course, of
You know,
course.
and there was nothing left to do. So God's like, hey, I have a plan. You know, let's send you back into time and have you start all over again. You know, and probably everybody was like, yeah, that's a great idea. You know, if you Romulan nails, you know, you're not reading the fine print. So we fell into time, and honestly, I don't know. Maybe at some point, each one of us becomes our own universe. And we have all the knowledge and all the experience and all the abilities to do that. I can't answer that question. You know, right now I'm still trying to figure out Alex Collier.
Right. So do you think that although we incarnate into other planets and everything, or even here, do you think that we can even incarnate to the future and the past?
Yes. Yes, that is possible.
Is that through wormholes?
In fact, there are several soul groups here now that have come back in time to right a terrible wrong.
Wow. Okay.
So the answer is yes.
Right.
You have to remember when the universe isn't linear. It's not linear at all. You can, if you know what you're doing, you can jump back and forth. For example, in fifth dimensional, the Andromedans, they can project themselves almost 1,000 years into their future, but they can also come back indefinitely into the past, even on other dimensions.
Wow.
So, but you know, it's interesting. The same law exists there as it does for us. Every time you look at the future, it changes. So if you were to do it again, let's say a few days later, there would be something different. It would not be exactly the same. So that particular law is prevalent regardless of the dimensions. But my understanding is that on some of the higher levels, they have become so dialed in that they no longer use future travel because they're creating it in the moment as they speak, as they live. They already know the future because they are projecting it and creating it in the moment they are. They don't send themselves into the future to see if they get there. To them, it's already done. It's already a foregone conclusion because they as a civilization are creating that future themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Where those that still time travel, whether it's back or forth or back, they're still learning who they are. They're still, you know, they're being mentored by someone and then they're mentoring others. In other words, again, it's the law of consistency. You know, they may not know everything, but what they do know, they know they can pass on to other civilizations. And they're obligated to do that, to pass on the information, because what that does is everybody is at the same level. That's the ultimate goal. And the more you share information, the more you are aligned in a specific goal or consciousness, everything seems to move very, very smoothly. And survival, there is no survival. You evolve very gracefully towards your goals. And everybody seems to be pretty happy from what I understand. It's only the dark side they're all fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, nothing makes them happy.
Yeah.
Even when they take everything, they're still not happy. It's not enough.
Because of the ego, they're just never
because
happy.
of the ego, and because, you know, nothing can fill that void of themselves. Only themselves can fill that void. But they're not even looking there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even looking there.
So when we die, will we remember why we came here?
That's the rumor.
That's the rumor, right?
That's the rumor. Yeah, we're shown. You know, you had Michael Jaco on, and he talked about, well, I think it was with you. He talked about where he's had some out of body experiences where he's fighting bad guys, and he's died in his dreams and they brought him back. I've had many of the same similar experiences, battling bad guys, monsters, literally, and been brought back twice that I'm aware of. And, a lot of us are having those experiences. When we go to sleep, we're still working. Our spiritual bodies are out and we're doing things. Most of it lower fourth density. What we're trying to do is help clear a path for the planet, for humanity to pass through the lower fourth density barrier where there's a lot of junk, a lot of garbage, dead spirits, demonic entities, etc. To pass through that with as much ease as possible so that we can get into higher fourth density as quick as possible. Because once you get there, it's great. From what I understand, it's smooth sailing from there. So that's why so many people are tired all the time. They may get their 10 hours, but they get up in the morning, they're still exhausted. Do you have those experiences?
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a physical or sometimes mental or it's even a spiritual kind of tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. An exhaustion of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, personally, I love my own space. I love my own company. And I like just reflecting, listening to my frequency, if you like, or my, I say I like listening to my gut and building that relationship. And I like my own company, Yeah.
Well, that's you. It's an extension and an expression of you.
Mm.
I would hope you'd like it.
Yeah. I also find that the more I'm waking, the more I find that I'm not interested in movies or games. Really, I've never been into games, but I'm more interested in learning, like, the things that I've learned from you in the last few months from listening to your videos. Spiritually and mentally, it takes me through a lovely journey, and that's the fun that I have. That's how I see
Well,
it.
then you have some insight as to how the A's process it.
Mm.
They're not interested in distractions. They're interested in living a reality and creating a reality and then seeing it physically manifest. That's their joy. That's where they express the most love, and because they can share it with the rest of their civilization. And there's no limits. There truly are no limits, just the ones we put on ourselves.
So when was the last time you was visited by Visayas or?
Well, Visayas crossed over September of '98. So he's no longer in their physicality. I've not heard if he's been reincarnated or not. But the last time I've seen or heard from Morine is going on almost 7 months now. But there's never been a pattern. Because they're time travelers, he could show up 4 months ago. And then you and I today would have a different conversation. So I don't know what the reason is. I know they're around. I absolutely know they're around because I know that they're working with the fifth dimensional Pleiadians as well, because the Andromedans mentor the Pleiadians. So they're all working together, the Tausetians, Alpha Centauri. There's many groups that are here that have a genetic link to us. They're here working to make sure that this leap happens because they all have soul groups here. And they have to help. They are obligated to assist these soul groups.
Right.
So we're gonna be okay.
Right.
I know we're gonna be okay.
So how would you compare the Pleiadians to the Andromedans?
I don't know. I don't know the piece.
Okay.
I know that and I will say this, that part of the problem we have now with the reptilians is because the Pleiadians had promised humanity some guardianship. And then what happened was the Pleiadians had a civil war in their star system, and they withdrew. And humanity was enslaved right away. As soon as they left, other groups came in and enslaved humanity. They were just waiting. And then you have some Pleiadian groups in Aldebaran that are service to self. So, it's a mixed bag. They're an evolving culture as well, civilization. I think when you regress or repress other civilizations, it's because you do not know yourself.
Absolutely.
And you can teach about, but usually you have to experience that for yourself in order to truly learn it.
Now,
so I think that there are elements of the Pleiadian star system, probably in fourth density, that are still learning that lesson.
Now, Mr. T, 45, is a very extraordinary man, and he's playing a very significant role, today. Do you think that his energy or his soul, whether he's conscious of it or not, or aware of it or not, do you think his soul is from the Pleiadians or another race who is here to help?
I don't know. I don't know where he's from. I'll ask and see if I get anything on that. But what I like about him is he is always himself. He doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks. And there is a lot of freedom in that.
I like that.
There really is,
And he has a great sense of humor.
Well, he would have to.
I get that, yeah.
He would have to.
I get that. It's you get away with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
But it would not surprise me if his soul comes from the future, because he's an excellent chess player and he already seems to know the moves.
Do you yeah. And when we look at The Last President, the book that was written in the 1900s, which describes Mr. T to a T, with Fifth Avenue and Barron Trump and etc. etc. You can't make this up. I know it sounds corny. That's a corny saying. So when you say ask about Mr. T, where his soul is, are you saying that you would ask
Mornay?
Mornay, yeah.
Ask Mornay. Yeah, if he would tell me where his soul comes from. Yeah.
That would be, please.
I would ask which particular system and or maybe soul group that he comes from.
Do you think that once you ask and you have those answers, do you think we can do another interview discussing this?
Yeah. I hope we don't have to wait that long, because I have no idea when I'll hear from them again. I wish I knew, but I don't.
Is it quite, oh, I see what you mean. So you never have any notice, they just appear?
No, I call and ask all the time, hey, where are you? I've even had out of bodies where I'm looking for them and I can't seem to find them. But I'm usually given a heads up, usually a few hours, and they already know kind of what I'm doing. They'll say, okay, listen, they'll say, let's take a drive. It's one of those. And let's take a drive in this direction. And then he'll say, okay, you're going to make a right here on this road. You're going to go to the very end. You're going to get out of the vehicle and you're going to walk down the path so many yards. And then I'll walk down that path, and either he's standing there, sometimes, not always, but there's a beam of light, the blue light, the beam of, and I'll walk into the light, boom, and I'm right up, I go right up into the ship, and the minute I physically manifest in the ship, he's clicking the belt on me so that I can be in their space. It's always the same. I always have to have the belt. So that's kind of how it works.
Wow. So because
That's
of
how
the
it's worked in the
density.
past.
Yeah.
It's very quick. It's kind of a rush. I'm used to it by now. The first couple times it was like, it's like you're in two places at once. You feel like you're being torn apart, and then all of a sudden you're in one place. It's interesting.
Wow. What if you know, I mean, what's the gap usually? And when was the last time you saw him before? Was that 7 months ago? I think you said.
6 months, 3 weeks,
Okay.
4 days.
And how frequently do you see him? Do you see him? You know, is it just very random?
No, at different times in my life, there were times I saw him 3 times a month. Sometimes it was once every year. There's never been a pattern to it, ever. And what's interesting, it's really not the amount, it's not the amount of times I've seen him, but it's the amount of time I've spent with him.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay? Because once I leave here and I'm on board, I could be with him days. And then they send me back, and 8 minutes have passed down here.
Right. I
I
understand.
mean, it's cool. It's really cool shit. So you just, so, you know, I don't count it as the number of times, but the amount of time I've been with him. It's gotten more difficult as I got older because I didn't want to come back,
Mm.
you know.
I mean, I haven't been where
Once you know, it's just like once you have another perspective,
Yeah.
once you have another perspective and you realize this ain't it, there's something better, you know, your entire focus is on something better. And you know, and then you get the experience of being there. Here I am in something better. I don't want to go home. I don't want to go back. Keep me, adopt me, please.
You know,
You know,
I haven't experienced what you've experienced, but just from listening to you and your other seminars and talks, I feel this. I sort of feel that. It resonates with me. I feel exactly that there is something better, but it gives me hope and I feel peace that there is something better. And I just feel that I'm blessed that I'm doing this, you know, interviewing you and many great others. And I feel like I'm here to do a mission and I'm relaxed. I'm on a mission and I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I'm educating myself and I feel peace, you know.
well, that's good because in your mind, you've already created the idea. What we now have to do is to share that with the rest of humanity. Give them the idea that there is something better, that there is something that we can all create that's better than what we have here now. Something that literally benefits everyone, not just the 1%.
If you see Marin, is it Morene?
Morene.
Morene.
I refer to him as them all the time.
Zem.
M.
Yeah.
M,
If you
yeah.
see, I'm sure you will. When you see M again, could you tell him? Could you send my regards?
I will do so.
Yeah, I would love
Well,
that.
I'm sure they know all about what's happening here now.
Yeah. Send him my regards and say thank you for what they're doing. You know, in the background.
I will do so.
Yeah.
You know, and he would probably say, thank you, Nicholas, for what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll be great.
So,
Well, Alex, it's been absolutely a lovely interview. I had a great time talking to you. I really enjoyed this interview and thank you very much. I'm absolutely honored to have you. Is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners before we finish?
always pray to have eyes that see the best in people, a heart that forgives the worst, and a mind that forgets the bad, and a soul that never loses faith in God. Please know that we are all part of God. And stop worrying about the past. Start focusing on what it is we're becoming, because that's what we're creating. And if you're focused on the past, all you're going to do is create that in the future. And if it isn't working for you now, why would it work for you in the future? Just let it go. Forgive, forget, and move on. Because everything's changing and you want to be part of the change. And, you know, who is it that you see yourself becoming? Who is it that you want to be that you aren't now? Now would be the time to start working on that and projecting it and creating it for yourself. Because anything is possible at this point. Anything. All the restrictions are being removed. The only thing that's going to be holding us back is ourselves now, literally.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. And I'll speak to you again soon. God bless you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Take care.